Evidence is pouring in indicating the arrival of North Korean soldiers in Russia to fight with Russian forces. Yet the West, including the U.S., has yet to confirm that this is the case. We're joined by Dr. Noerper for more. Welcome back.
Delighted to be back.
So regarding the questionnaire that asks North Korean soldiers to provide their sizes for hats, uniforms, and shoes, how much proof is it that North Koreans are actually in Russia to serve in the war?
Well, this is something that we've been considering for quite some time, certainly since the June meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. And it sounded at that time like they had spoken of some agreement in terms of a manpower transfer. There does appear to be evidence. This is one bit of it. Clearly, the satellite imagery is important, what the NIS, the National Intelligence Service, has released, as well as these videos and the suggestion that facial recognition technology may well be confirming North Koreans in places like Vladivostok, where these special forces, some 1,500 reportedly, have arrived. There's also been suggestion that there may be North Koreans massing in places like Ulan-Ude and Buryatia in Russia. So we'll be looking very closely. Clearly, the fact that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has raised this, has spoken of as many as 10,000, warrants very real concern. And of course, with the visit between the South Korean and British foreign ministers this week, we'll give them a lot to talk about, as well as for the Americans, the South Koreans and the Japanese as an international community in their continuing efforts to curb this type of misadventure.
Well, like you said, the rumor has been going around for quite some time. But the question is, why is Russia not commenting on, as far as intel agencies, a confirmation that North Korea is sending 10,000 soldiers to Russia, like you said?
There's nothing to be gained for Russia in admitting this. In fact, what it does is it points to weaknesses. It points to the attrition of Russia in terms of its own military capability. The fact that it would need to bring in North Koreans speaks of tremendous loss in Russia, well over 300,000 killed there, perhaps as many as 500,000, and looking for new reserves, whether those are Russians that are brought in from factories and North Korea's replaced them, whether it's North Koreans on the battlefield. Clearly, he has reached out to Chechens and others, and this raises the concern that the conflict is becoming increasingly globalized in Ukraine to involve the North Koreans beyond the very lethal missile technology they have provided. We have seen missiles on the fields there, and we know that there are munitions at the ready, some 8 million rounds so far, over 13,000 crates of munitions that have been brought in. So a really tremendous concern about what has been transferred from North Korea, especially since this leaders' meeting. And now, especially in terms of the concern of North Koreans on the battlefield potentially there, or at least backfilling Russians who then turn to the battlefield.
Well, it makes sense for Russia not to admit the rumor because it'll do no good for Russia. But the U.S. is also yet to confirm the speculation. Why is that? Is there any special reason why it's being so cautious?
Oh, I think the United States and the entire international community are looking at this very, very closely. The Ukraine burden is a tremendous one, Gaza as well, as you've just pointed out in your last report. And they want to make sure they get this right. The United States and South Korea and Japan on their trilateral response in terms of an international mechanism. We've just seen a step up of a new mechanism to monitor sanctions violations, but they'll be looking at this very closely. There's a lot of concern about the fact that this may turn into a broader conflict if we see North Koreans on the field there. So whether we're talking about 1,500 special warfare component personnel, whether it is the 10,000 that Vladimir Zelensky is concerned about, or many tens of thousands, perhaps many more than that, this warrants real international concern. It's also a violation of United Nations resolutions, Resolution 2397 from December of 2017, which went into effect on in December of 2019, which does not permit foreign workers, whether you classify military assistance this way or not, it still is a violation of a code that Russia and China have committed to. So the broader specter of having North Korea in really warrants concern because it leads to an escalatory effect, and we do not need a rise of tensions neither around Ukraine nor on the Korean Peninsula. And remember, the North Koreans are looking at this to gather important intelligence information on how well their weaponry and their men perform on the field if that does become the case.
Well, let's say the speculation does turn out to be true. What steps should or will be taken by the international community, including, Seoul and Washington?
It will require a tremendous amount of coordination. Clearly, again, the fact that the UK foreign minister is in Seoul to meet with South Korea's foreign minister is important. The entire European Union would need to mobilize with common interests like the US, South Korea, Japan trilateral, partners like Australia, New Zealand, India, and others. But there will be some sort of very calculated response. And of course, within the halls of the United Nations, where Russia has already put tremendous duress because of its aggression in Ukraine, and the idea that there will need to be some sort of mediation and some sort of movement there, and the UN Security Council will no doubt be very concerned about this. So it's a direct challenge to the entire international community, as well as of concern to the United States, South Korea, and its partners.
Dr. Noerper, before I let you go, North Korea also claimed on Saturday that it discovered some of the remains of at least one drone sent from South Korea, describing it as the same type displayed on Seoul's Armed Forces Day that took place earlier this month. The question is, one, how likely is it that it belongs to South Korea? And two, why do you think Seoul's military says it's not even worth mentioning on the accusation?
Well, again, there's no benefit in sort of acknowledging it, whether it is a South Korean drone or not. That is the danger, though, of using these drones to respond to the balloons. A back and forth in terms of drone technology is not a good prospect. Of course, North Korea has developed its own interest and has a partnership with Iran. Iran has deployed crude drone technology in Ukraine that has proved very lethal, and that may become a factor in the Middle East conflict as well. So we need to be very careful in terms of how we proceed here, and this is a time when we need to de-escalate and try to avoid these types of things because it just simply stokes the fire of hardliners. And one thing North Korea did say is if they see more of this, they will react, but to this point, they've, other than in terms of a verbal reaction, hesitated to physically react to it. Of course, this was in response, if it is a South Korean drone, to the North Korean balloon incursions. And of course, that has implications for civil aviation safety, among others. So we really need to look at this and try to find ways to step down this type of exchange, drone, balloon, and otherwise, and create a safer airspace and make calmer heads prevail here.
Indeed, Dr. Noerper, thank you so much for your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Delighted to be back. Aloha.